Former Epstein lawyer Alan Dershowitz is coming under fire after he made remarks about what the Palestinian people needed to earn in order to get a state. These are disgusting comments from Alan Dershowitz. He really does come across and sounds like a typical colonizer. Let's go ahead and get into it. It's this interview that he had recently with Newsmax.
So, Professor, what do you make of this meeting between these two? I mean, Bibi comes all the way across. They meet for quite a while, obviously very cordial. They seem on the same page. Is there something special, though, about the timing of this meeting between them?
Yeah, I recently spoke both to President Trump and to Prime Minister Netanyahu. They're both friends I speak to from time to time. And this was the strongest meeting between them. Of all the 6 meetings they've had, this is the one in which both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu showed what happens when Israel and the United States work together. Now, the rest of the world is moving away from Israel, but Trump is moving closer and closer to Israel.
Because the rest of the world understands that Israel is a pariah, genocidal state. Because the rest of the world saw babies and women being killed for over 2 years in front of our eyes, because the rest of the world saw Benjamin Netanyahu and his comrades, a part of his ministry there, making very racist and Islamophobic and genocidal comments about the Palestinian people. That is why the rest of the world has turned away from Israel. But this is our own moment here, ladies and gentlemen. Alan Dershowitz is admitting himself that the rest of the world has turned away from Israel. And yet he continues to support Israel because he is a Zionist, because he's a supremacist, because Alan Dershowitz, and we're going to get to it, the comments that he made about the Palestinian people, we're going to get there because he is getting ratioed on social media right now. Alan Dershowitz reminds me of a typical colonizer. Typical colonial mindset, this idea that this place is owed to you. And we discussed this on this show about the biblical reasons that people are using and the difference between biblical Israel and the modern day Israel. And the modern day Israel is not the biblical Israel. And Israel and the US government, they have managed to use evangelical Christians to continue this genocidal project. I am here to warn you all today that what has happened to the Palestinian people, if Zionism continues, that will become normalized throughout the world. Israel has gone into Somaliland. They have them now bending the knee towards their genocidal venture. Any country that does not bend the knee to Israel, heed my warning on this. They are going to be considered a threat the same way they consider Iran a threat. And what happened in Gaza will become normalized throughout the world. You think they'll just do this to the Palestinian people? No, they'll do it to any one of us. This is a big wake-up call. And Alan Dershowitz, who has spent most of his time, we're doing a mini deep dive into him today, who has spent most of his time defending criminals, corrupt people, talking badly about the women who came forward against Jeffrey Epstein. Alan Dershowitz just continues to defend corrupt, evil people. And I'm going to show you where he fits in to all of this.
And I think he sent a very powerful message to Iran that they better not be developing the capability of sending rockets to Israeli civilian cities and developing more nuclear weapons, because if that happens, there are going to be more B-2s. But, you know, Israel doesn't even need American support. All Israel needs is a green light from Donald Trump.
So there you have it, folks. From a Zionist himself, he said Israel does not need U.S. support. Okay, then stop sending money to Israel. It's right there. It's all on the record. Alan Dershowitz is saying that Israel does not need American support. So if they don't need our support, we need to stop sending aid and money to them immediately today. And we need to use those funds right here in the United States for the American people. Israel has universal health care. We don't have universal health care. Israel has free university. We don't have free university. And when you bring up those ideas here in the United States, you're looked down upon. You're called radical, far left. But you never hear those people claim that Israel is radical or far left. So what's it really about? They don't need us. He said it, folks, not me. They don't need us. So we need to end support for them today. No more money. No more weapons, no bomb, no nothing, nothing. They don't need us.
Go in on its own and destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. Look, in the end, and this didn't come up today, but there'll never be peace in the Middle East unless there's regime change in Iran.
Now he's pushing regime change. So here we go. Doesn't this sound familiar? Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying this script for decades. He said it about Iraq. He said it about Afghanistan. We need regime change. Otherwise, we're at risk. We. It's all about us. We're going to be threatened. When Israel is the one that is wreaking the havoc. There will never be peace in the Middle East as long as Israel is there. There will never be peace in the Middle East as long as Zionism continues. That's why you don't have peace in the Middle East. It's not the other countries that surround Israel. It's Israel. The colonizers, the genociders. You kick people off their land. You steal their homes. You talk about peace in the Middle East, and you literally have Israeli settlers going into the West Bank, kicking people out of their homes, burning their crops, killing their animals. That's the violence. There is one perpetrator, one aggressor, and it's Israel. That's why you don't have peace in the Middle East.
The current Iranian regime is the major barrier to peace in the Middle East. And if President Trump wants to be known as the peace president, he has to be in support of regime change. And then there can be deals with Saudi Arabia and all the other deals. But this was an extraordinarily successful meeting between the president and the prime minister and between the United States and Israel. And I think it bodes very, very well for the future of the relationship.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of good stuff came out of this. And maybe what Trump was saying when I don't even want to waste the gas on a B-52 bomber was exactly what you were alluding to, that he's just going to give Israel the go-ahead to do what they need to do. Maybe that's kind of what he was hinting at. Also part of this peace deal.
It's not even a hinting. Israel's going to do whatever it wants to do because that's what it's been doing. The fact that they can, evade the ICC, the fact that international law doesn't apply to them. These people are demons. All these people that you see sitting at this table, these are demons. These are evil people. And for the Christians who are listening, they want you to believe that this is something that Christ would have wanted. No. You need to wake up. You've been brainwashed. You've been tricked. You have been lied to for years. That is the biggest psyop I have seen happen in the world, that you need to get behind this fake state with all these Europeans claiming they're indigenous to a land that they stole. And I'm glad that more people are waking up to this. But the evangelical Christians, you have been brainwashed, and you're part of the driving force that is keeping this going.
Is the Board of Peace, as it's being called. It would oversee the reconstruction in Gaza. Trump obviously says he would love to lead the board. You know, he's the master builder there. How do you see this process playing out? And who else might be on this board?
Well, we know that the former Prime Minister of England was supposed to be on the board, and now he was apparently vetoed by Hamas. So we're going to see some vetoes, and we're going to see some exchanges. But I think we'll see some American leaders. I think we'll see some leaders from European countries, probably not from England. England has kind of disqualified itself. I don't think any country that foolishly recognized a Palestinian state where there is no state, and without even demanding that they recognize Israel, I think every one of those countries is disqualified. So
Israel is already recognized throughout the world. And by the way, the former prime minister of England that they're referring to is Tony Blair. They wanted Tony Blair, who's a war criminal, to be a part of that board. These people just want destruction. That's all they want. And what you see them doing to the Palestinian people, they will do it to you too, if you don't bend the knee. People say that colonialism is dead. It's not dead. It exists currently today through Israel. They have wreaked havoc all over the world, and they are implementing massive amounts of displacement and continue to do so. And this is why I continue to say, when people say, well, foreign policy, it's over there, it's not here. No, fuck that. You got homeless people right here in the United States, increasing population. People increase evictions being increased. You have people who can't afford to put a down payment on a home. We don't have health care for everybody in this damn country. The money that should be used here is being used abroad to wreak havoc on the world and to support Israel. What you see happen, the same way they went into African countries, they can come into this country. They can go into any other country if you don't get on board with their agenda. This is supremacy. This is the danger of supremacy. And I've continued to sound the alarm about this. Stop this mess. Stop this mess with the chosen this and the chosen that. The chosen people in the Bible was referring to the people who choose to follow Jesus Christ. And they've managed to convince all these people otherwise. Over 1,000 pastors went to Israel to absorb that brainwashing material and then to come back to the United States and to get their congregation on board with it. If you're going to the church and your pastor is telling you this, you need to leave and find a different church. It's that simple. Do not fall for it. And make sure you share this with as many people as possible. You are being used. Christians are being used.
So is Turkey disqualified? So it's going to be interesting whether they can get a half a dozen people or a dozen people to serve on a board of peace. I don't think it's going to be easy because so many countries have disqualified themselves by their foolish and negative recognition of a fake Palestinian state.
But hopefully the UN will have nothing to do with the reconstruction of Gaza.
You see how they're talking about the United Nations? Don't let the UN get involved. Oh, no, not the UN. They're laughing about it as if it's a joke. What is the point of having a UN if they can't do anything?
With it, it's doomed to failure. The UN can have nothing to do with it. The UN is now a major source of conflict rather than a source for peace. I'd like to see the United States and Israel get out of the UN eventually, unless the UN changes its policies, and maybe they will change some of its policies, but right now they are a negative force in the world.
Imagine calling the UN a source of conflict and Israel's the one that's bombing everybody. Jesus Christ.
So apparently there's no plan for a Palestinian state, but the Gaza peace agreement would have the Palestinian Authority kind of take over at the end of 2027. In your mind, what does Palestinian leadership, if you can call it that, actually look like?
Well, there are all kind of rumors about this guy Barghouti who's in prison. Maybe he'll get out and become the great hope, the great leader. Look, Palestinians haven't earned themselves a state. They have to earn a state the way the Jewish people earned the state over.
Let's go back. This is the part, guys. This is the part that people are coming after him for. He has some nerve.
Earned themselves a state. They have to earn a state the way
it actually look like.
Well, there are all kind of rumors about this guy Barghouti who's in prison. Maybe he'll get out and become the great hope, the great leader. Look, Palestinians haven't earned themselves a state. They have to earn a state the way the Jewish people earned the state over hundreds of years of state building. And
So colonizer says that the Palestinian people haven't earned a state. They have to earn themselves a state over years of building the same way the Jewish people did. Let me ask you guys a question. How can you build when there's constant disruption? How can you build when there's constant displacement? How can you build when you have no power, no resources? Because you see, this type of logic, I'm curious to hear what Alan Dershowitz would say about the indigenous people right here in the United States. No, they haven't earned themselves land back. We have a problem. When you are constantly dealing with disruption, when people constantly come in and wreak havoc, bomb your buildings, kill your people, control the land, the water, the air, control what food goes into Gaza, and they fence you in as if you are cattle. How can you build when you are constantly disrupted? One of the things I talked about in my documentary, Remove Black Erasure in Boston, during my research, what I learned, because I'm not originally from Boston, but I've been here for over 13 years. What I learned is that the reason why Roxbury and Dorchester, the Black communities there, the reason why there's that destruction, the reason why they haven't been able to build a profitable Roxbury or Dorchester is because there was constant disruption. Constant disruption by the city officials, urban renewal, redlining, gentrification. They're doing it right now. And the people there have no power. They try, but they can't stop the city and developers from coming in and stealing their land and building what they want to build on it. So they got pushed out. So you can't build if there's constant disruption. The people in the West Bank built homes. The Palestinians there built homes. But the Israeli settlers, they come there and they burn them down or they steal them. Then you're only allowed to go to certain places at certain times and you have a different passport and you can't move freely. So how are you supposed to build? So I wonder what Alan Dershowitz would say about the indigenous people here in the United States. I wonder what Alan Dershowitz would say about the Black communities here in the United States and the way that urban renewal and redlining and all these other policies, the burning down of the Black Wall Streets. I wonder what he would say about us. This is why I say you cannot work with these people. You cannot work with Zionists. You cannot say, well, let's align with them and organize with them and, and we'll benefit their cause with Israel and they'll help us here. No. We will always be at the bottom. We will never be priority. Their Zionist agenda is always number one. We don't come close to that at all. That's what every group in this country. It's Zionism or nothing. It's supremacy. That is what it is. And you can't stand up here, and I push back on the ADL about this multiple times. You can't sit up here and say that you're fighting against white supremacy here in the United States. You're fighting against racism here in the United States, and you support supremacy for your people. Because the whole idea is we all get together and we fight back. We organize together and fight back against white supremacy. but you got to support the supremacy for my people in Israel, because that's really what the deal is. And all these organizations, NAACP, Urban League, Black Congressional Caucus, that decided to move along with the Zionists and work along with them for the mission of the greater Israel, while you spend time doing that, you have not spent time trying to organize and build for the Black community. And you will never be prioritized. So you can't have it both ways. I continue to say this to the Cory Bookers, to the Hakeem Jeffries. You cannot sit up here and complain about white supremacy and you support this supremacy. He sounds just like an old colonizer. Also, who the hell is Alan Dershowitz to tell people whether or not they deserve a state? They haven't earned it. Because here's the thing. I don't care what school you went to, Alan. I don't give a damn that you taught at Harvard. I don't care how many books you write. I don't care how many elite academic institutions that you attended. I don't care how many speaking engagements that you made. You do not become the authority on whether or not a group of oppressed people can have a state. It's disgusting, and he's getting ratioed for it. But we'll show you who he really is.
And you can't just create a state out of nothing. And maybe someday there'll be a Palestinian state, but it can be a state without terrorists, without Hamas, and without the current Palestinian leadership. So I think it's a possible dream for the future, but it's not a reality in my lifetime.
It's not a reality because Israel doesn't want it to be a reality. They don't want a two-state solution. You can't create a state out of nothing. Why is there nothing? Because Israel destroyed it. Who is Alan Dershowitz? Let me show you how corrupt this guy is. Alan Dershowitz helped sex offender Jeffrey Epstein get a plea deal. Now he's tweeting about the age of consent laws. Alan Dershowitz, let's get into this. Harvard Law School professor, high-profile defense lawyer Dershowitz helped negotiate a non-prosecution agreement under which Epstein served just 13 months in a county jail. Much of it spent on work release in an office, ever since details of that agreement were reported by Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald. We were talking about her recently. Dershowitz and his role in the deal have been under added scrutiny. The only increase this week with the publication of the New Yorker story by reporter Connie Bruck, detailing not just Dershowitz's role in defending Epstein, but also allegations by two women who said that they were directed to have sex with Dershowitz while in Epstein's orbit. Now, he has denied these allegations, but this is who Alan Dershowitz is. He represents the most corrupt, vile people. Still defends Epstein till this day. Still calls out the victims. He goes against the victims, the women who were trafficked and abused. The side that Alan Dershowitz has continued to be on is the side of those who are corrupt and in power. But he went a step further. Let's get into it. Despite widespread attention to his role in the Epstein case and a defamation suit from one of his accusers, Dershowitz has no intentions of laying low. For instance, he continues to publicly criticize the age of consent laws, most recently on Twitter earlier this week. He has a problem with the age of consent. Of course, he would represent Jeffrey Epstein. Why you got a problem with the age of consent, Alan? Dershowitz sees himself as the wronged party, victimized by women who were lying about him. Goes on to say here, he became famous by defending high-profile clients. All right? So we can see here, he handled appeals for Klaus von Bülow, a wealthy man with a mansion on New York 5th Avenue, as well as Mike Tyson, who had been convicted of sexually assaulting an 18-year-old woman. You see the trend? Dershowitz met Epstein in 1996 and apparently became part of his collection of famous and well-connected friends. According to Bruck, the two flew together that year to a party at the Ohio estate of billionaire Leslie Wexner, Epstein's only publicly known client. I was Jeffrey Epstein's intellectual gift to Leslie Wexner. So this is the circle that Alan Dershowitz swims in. Leslie Wexner, the owner of the Limited Group, which is also, that includes Victoria's Secret, who also gave Epstein his money. That's how Epstein got that money in the beginning. So it has been alleged that there is some type of relationship between those two, because I don't know anybody that just says, here's a couple of $1 million, go have fun. These are his buddies. Dershowitz said that Epstein was brilliant. You hear this? Epstein also helped Dershowitz invest some money in a hedge fund. Always goes back to money. Let's get into the age of consent here. They get into a lot of the Epstein abuser stuff, but I've talked about that before on this show. Dershowitz's treatment of sexual assault cases caused some former students concern. Bruck also makes the case that Dershowitz has long been interested in the defense of men accused of sex crimes. And we all know that Israel has become a haven for pedos. We all know this. And he's pro-Israel. In 1992, he wrote in a book, "It is precisely because sexual assault is so serious a crime that falsely accusing someone of it should be regarded as an extremely serious crime as well." He convoluted ways of thinking about how men could misinterpret lack of consent, and it wasn't regulated to when we were speaking about the sexual assault case. I have to say sexual assault because we're on YouTube. Whenever we were on the syllabus, he would bring it up. So this is who Alan Dershowitz is. Ready to defend this to a T. Another student said that at one point a female classmate raised her hand and said, essentially, okay, enough grape examples. There are women in this class who have been graped. Can we move on to something else? Alan Dershowitz's obsession with this should be a red flag to anybody. He went on to tell Vox he taught about it in exact proportion to the amount it came up in the casebook. He said that some events the former students described didn't happen, like a student saying there was too much discussion of it. This part here. Even today, Alan Dershowitz continues to defend his most controversial stances. In 1997, he argued against statutory rape laws, saying the age of consent should be 15. There must be criminal sanctions against sex with very young children, but it is doubtful whether such sanctions should apply to teenagers above the age of puberty, since voluntary sex is so common in their age group. He wrote that in the LA Times op-ed. So first of all, I found it interesting that he said the age of 15, because what we noticed from the Epstein files is that a lot of these girls at the time were around that age, 15, 16, some 17. So it's interesting he says at the age of 15, because that would definitely recruit Jeffrey Epstein and all those wealthy billionaires that were on that island abusing young girls. 15-year-old kids, they're kids. They do not have the brain development at that point in time to consent. And I continue to stress this. It's important for people to understand a 15-year-old's brain is not fully developed. Who goes out of their way to advocate for this? It's no different. It reminded me of Megyn Kelly's recent statement as well. It was like, well, it's different. You know, it was at 15. It's just, these are children. And why that magic age of 15? Notice they're not saying, he didn't say 16. He didn't say 17. Why that magic age of 15? That's who Alan Dershowitz is. A dirty old man. A dirty old colonial mindset. Creepy old man who doesn't seem to have a problem with oppression, thinks that Palestinians didn't earn a state. So now apparently he's the gatekeeper on statehood. And thinks that the age of consent should be 15 years old. So that's who Alan Dershowitz is. This man, till this day, continues to be invited onto corporate media. He continues to get paid speaking engagements, and he continues to write a lot of books. But you have people out here who haven't done any of these things that Alan Dershowitz has done, and they're blacklisted. So that right there lets you know who's really running the ship. That's not a left thing. That's not a right thing. It's a corrupt thing. Alan Dershowitz, he's a gangster too. And just because he taught at Harvard, just because he was a professor, doesn't mean that he's not also a gangster. It's disgusting. He's corrupt, and he hangs around corrupt people. And that tells you something about this world, that money, power, and corruption, a lot of times these things go hand in hand. This is someone that, and I've said this time and time again, people need to stop inviting him onto their shows. I say that for independent media. Corporate media is going to do whatever the hell they want to do. They're not going to listen anyway. But if you're an independent media, you need to stop inviting him on your fucking show. Piers Morgan needs to stop bringing on him. And the IDF soldier, Jonathan, who's also a war criminal. Stop bringing these people on your show. They're sick, vile. And that's all I got to say about that. This is just absolutely disgusting. And you notice something else? Notice how far he was able to get. Notice how he was able to build a very lucrative career, and he hung around and defended all these criminals, all these corrupt people. But he has the nerve to tell the Palestinian people they haven't earned a state. Fuck you. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.